It started like any other day on Earth. People were busy with their routines, unaware that the universe was about to deliver a shock that would change humanity forever. In a small control room somewhere on the planet, a team of scientists monitored the quiet signals coming from the outer edges of the solar system. Most of the time, these signals were just harmless noise, patterns that could be ignored. But that morning, something unusual appeared on their screens, a signal that didn't belong to any known source. At first, no one could believe it. The transmission was weak, distorted, almost like static. Then, slowly, a voice emerged. It was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was deep, confident, and almost proud. The scientists leaned closer, trying to make sense of the words. The message was clear, and it was chilling. Somewhere far beyond the planets humans had explored, a human outpost had been destroyed. Not by accident, but by a deliberate act. Broadcast for the whole universe to see. The footage that followed was even more shocking. It wasn't just an attack, it was a display. Ships floating silently in space, wreckage scattered across the void, and signs of lives lost. The aliens responsible didn't hide it. They wanted humans to see it. They wanted to show what they could do. For a moment, the room went completely silent. No one spoke. Everyone's heart raced. The broadcast was not just news, it was a challenge. A provocation that seemed almost impossible to ignore. As the signal reached the public, it spread like wildfire. Every screen that could receive the transmission showed the same horrifying images. People stopped in the streets, glued to their devices, struggling to comprehend what was happening. Governments scrambled to understand the event. Scientists tried to verify the footage, and families watched in fear and disbelief. How could this happen? Who could do such a thing? And most importantly, why target humans in this way? The reactions were immediate and intense. The attack had been on a small, almost forgotten outpost, but it represented something much bigger. It was a symbol of vulnerability, a reminder that humans were no longer alone in the universe. Yet, instead of causing despair, the broadcast sparked something different. People felt anger, yes, but it was mixed with a sense of unity. For the first time, humanity saw itself as one species, facing a challenge far greater than anything they had imagined. Across the world, people gathered. In homes, in streets, in offices, in schools, the same images were playing, and the same questions filled the air. Some cried in shock, unable to process the reality. Others clenched their fists, fueled by a deep, instinctive sense of justice. They didn't know what could be done yet, but they knew that this act could not be ignored. It was a turning point. The kind of moment history remembered. In the scientific and military communities, the reaction was no less dramatic. Command centers buzzed with activity as experts tried to piece together the details. Was the broadcast real? Could it have been a mistake? Every analysis pointed to the same conclusion. It was real. The outpost was gone, and the aliens had shown no remorse. Every scenario they had trained for, every simulation they had run, had not prepared them for this moment. But while the world was shocked and frightened, something remarkable was also happening. People began to communicate across borders, across cultures, across oceans. For decades, humanity had struggled with its differences. Political, cultural, and economic divisions seemed insurmountable. Yet now, they all shared a common focus. The broadcast had reminded them that there was something bigger than their everyday conflicts. Humanity had a reason to come together. In quiet homes, conversations changed. Neighbors who barely knew each other spoke about the broadcast. Scientists wrote updates that the public could understand, explaining what had happened and what it could mean. News anchors tried to deliver facts while calming the widespread fear. Even children, though confused, could feel the tension and the importance of the moment. Humanity had been shaken to its core, but they were also waking up to their own strength. Leadership of nations acted quickly, though carefully. Emergency meetings were held in secret and in public. Messages were sent, and alliances were considered. The broadcast had been intended to intimidate, but it had the opposite effect. Leaders saw that humanity's reaction could no longer be divided or predictable. The broadcast had awakened something powerful, a determination to defend, to protect, and to never again allow such a display of aggression to go unanswered. By the evening, the world had already changed. The broadcast, which had started as a signal from a distant part of space, had become a mirror reflecting humanity itself. It showed fear, yes, but also courage. It showed loss, but also unity. People began to realize that this was not just an attack on a remote outpost. It was a challenge, a test of what humanity could become. As the first part of this story ends, the world watches and waits. The outpost is gone. The attackers remain unknown, but humanity is no longer the same. Something inside them has shifted. There is fear, certainly, but there is also resolve. For the first time, billions of humans across the planet understand one undeniable truth. They will never allow themselves to be mere spectators to injustice, and the universe will soon learn that humanity is capable of far more than anyone ever imagined. The broadcast from space had shaken humanity, but it also had done something unexpected. It brought people together. Across the globe, from crowded cities to quiet villages, humans began to talk about what had happened. The images of the destroyed outpost and the cold, proud announcement from the alien empire stayed in everyone's minds. People could not stop thinking about it. The initial shock slowly turned into a feeling that could not be ignored. Anger. This was not the kind of anger that came from personal grievances. It was a shared anger, a collective response to something much larger. It was the anger of being violated, of having something precious, something human destroyed for no reason. And this anger was not aimless. It carried a sense of clarity. Humanity was being told that they were weak. But for the first time, humans began to feel that maybe they were not. Maybe it was time to show what they could do. Governments acted quickly, but they could not control the public response. Crowds gathered in streets, waving flags and holding signs that simply said, "We will not forget." People from different backgrounds and countries, often divided by politics and culture, suddenly found themselves united. The broadcast had broken down invisible walls between nations. Everyone could understand the message. This attack had been aimed at all of humanity, not just one corner of it. Even in small towns, where life usually moved slowly, the reaction was intense. People held meetings in community halls, discussing what could be done. Scientists and engineers spoke openly, sharing knowledge about space and defense technologies in simple terms. Students in schools debated what the broadcast meant and what humans could do next. In living rooms, families talked late into the night, realizing that this was a moment that would be remembered for generations. The anger was mixed with fear. For many, the idea that humans were no longer alone in the universe was terrifying. But the fear was tempered by a growing sense of determination. Humans realized that they could not rely on luck or hope alone. They would need to act, to prepare, and to ensure that nothing like this could happen again. And while the world had often been divided, now there was a shared purpose. The broadcast also changed the way governments communicated. Leaders held joint press conferences that were broadcast live around the world. Instead of arguing or blaming each other, they spoke with one voice. They reassured people, promised to investigate, and emphasized the importance of unity. Their words were not just for show, they reflected a new reality. The broadcast had reminded humanity that survival and dignity were more important than any national differences. Military organizations were quietly preparing behind the scenes. They had long known that the universe was vast and unknown, but the broadcast proved that the threat was real. Training intensified, strategies were revised, and alliances were strengthened. Unlike in movies, it was not just about war. It was about being ready, about ensuring that humans could protect themselves if the universe decided to test them again, at the same time. Ordinary people began to feel empowered. Scientists, engineers, and even hobbyists joined discussions about how humans could explore and defend space. Universities launched new programs to study deep space communication, propulsion systems, and planetary defense. Private companies invested in space technologies at a rate never seen before. The broadcast had become a spark that ignited innovation on a global scale. Social media exploded with activity. People shared news, ideas, and messages of encouragement. Memes and artwork reflected a new human pride and determination. Children drew pictures of humans standing together, of Earth shining brightly against the stars. Adults debated strategies, shared articles, and discussed what kind of world they wanted to live in. Across every platform, the conversation was clear. Humans would not be intimidated, and humans would not remain passive. The broadcast also revealed a side of humanity that was rarely seen. Amid the fear and anger, stories of bravery and kindness emerged. Volunteers helped those affected by the initial shock. Mental health professionals offered guidance to people struggling with anxiety, and teachers found creative ways to explain the situation to young students. Humanity's response was not only about defense, it was about caring for one another. Even in the face of an unknown threat. By the end of the first week, the world had changed in subtle but important ways. People who had never paid attention to science or space were now reading about orbital mechanics, communication systems, and the possibilities of life beyond Earth. News outlets ran special segments explaining the broadcast, the destroyed outpost, and the potential implications for humanity. Instead of panic, there was curiosity. Instead of despair, there was focus. Even art and culture reflected the shift. Writers, filmmakers, and artists explored themes of unity, courage, and resilience. Musicians composed songs that spoke of human strength and hope. Every corner of society felt the ripple effect of the broadcast, and it became clear that humanity was no longer the same. Something inside had awakened, collective spirit that had lain dormant for centuries. The broadcast had also brought clarity to what humans valued most. It was not power or wealth, but life, dignity, and connection. People reflected on the lives lost at the outpost, and they felt a deep responsibility to ensure that no human would ever be treated as expendable again. This was a turning point in human consciousness. The attack had been intended to intimidate, but it instead ignited a sense of purpose and identity. Scientists worked to trace the signal. They analyzed the alien technology, trying to understand how the broadcast had reached Earth. Engineers studied the images, looking for clues about the strength and tactics of the attackers. Even without the ability to respond immediately, humanity's curiosity and intelligence became tools of resilience. Every discovery, no matter how small, strengthened the feeling that humans could face the unknown and survive. Religious and philosophical communities also weighed in, reflecting on the meaning of the broadcast. Sermons, lectures, and discussions emphasized the importance of unity, courage, and moral responsibility. While interpretations varied, the consensus was clear. The attack was a warning, but it also presented an opportunity for humanity to grow stronger, smarter, and more connected. Meanwhile, the broadcast continued to circulate, reaching remote areas where internet access was limited. People in rural communities, in mountains and deserts, reacted just as strongly. It was a moment that transcended geography, class, and culture. Humanity had been reminded that they were all part of one species, and that their fate was shared. Even In moments of fear, humans found ways to laugh and support one another. Memes and light-hearted discussions offered relief, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, humanity could find resilience and joy. This mix of seriousness and humor strengthened the sense of community, showing that humans could face any challenge without losing their essence. By the end of the month, the initial anger had transformed into a steady determination. People were no longer reacting impulsively. They were planning, learning, and preparing. Scientists and engineers published new research, governments coordinated efforts, and ordinary citizens contributed in ways large and small. Humanity had taken the first step toward becoming more than a single, planet-bound species. The broadcast had done something the aliens never intended. It had united humanity, sparked innovation, and awakened a global sense of purpose. People understood that this was not just about survival, it was about identity. Humans would not be intimidated, and humans would not be divided. They would face the universe together, with courage and determination. And yet, the story was only beginning. The anger that had first sparked after the broadcast had matured into something more profound. It was no longer just a response to fear. It was a recognition of potential. Humanity had realized that they could face the unknown, protect their own, and stand as one. The universe had shown its hand, and humans were ready to respond. As night fell across cities and countryside, people looked up at the stars with new eyes. The same stars that once seemed distant and cold now felt connected to them, almost familiar. Somewhere out there, the forces that had attacked the outpost watched, unaware that they had awakened something far greater than they had expected. Humanity had been provoked, but they had also been united. And from that unity, a new chapter in history was beginning, one where humans would no longer be silent observers of the universe, but active participants in their own destiny. The broadcast had shaken the world, and humanity's anger had turned into something deeper. It was no longer just shock or outrage, it was determination. Across every continent, humans began to understand that the universe was no longer just a distant place full of mysteries. It was now something that demanded their attention, and humanity was ready to respond in ways that would surprise even themselves. Governments that had often struggled to agree on anything suddenly found a common goal. Instead of arguing over borders or resources, leaders convened emergency meetings, focusing on one question: how could humans protect themselves and ensure nothing like the destroyed outpost ever happened again? In these meetings, decades of political tension seemed to vanish. For once, the interests of nations aligned with the interests of the species as a whole. Scientists and engineers were at the heart of this effort. They studied every detail of the alien broadcast, trying to understand the technology, the ships, and the strategies. Labs that had once focused on minor experiments now worked around the clock, developing systems that could detect threats in space, analyze signals, and even communicate back. Universities joined the effort, with students and professors working side by side, fueled by a sense of purpose they had never known before. Every day, new discoveries gave humanity hope. Engineers found ways to improve propulsion systems, making travel through space faster and more efficient. Communication specialists developed ways to intercept and decode signals, turning what had once been incomprehensible noise into usable information. Strategists and military planners worked tirelessly to understand how humanity could defend itself against something that seemed so advanced. For the first time, humans realized the true power of their own intelligence and creativity. But this transformation wasn't limited to governments or laboratories. Ordinary people felt the change too. Citizens across the world volunteered in countless ways. Some focused on education, helping others understand the challenges and possibilities of space. Others contributed by building infrastructure, supporting research, or simply raising awareness. Even artists, musicians, and writers played a role, using their work to inspire courage, unity, and hope. Every effort mattered, because humanity had learned that survival required more than weapons or technology. It required spirit. The broadcast had also taught humans something about themselves. For centuries, people had underestimated their potential, believing that they were small and fragile in the vastness of space. But now, they began to see that their greatest strength lay in unity and resilience. One mind alone could solve a problem, but millions of minds working together could achieve the impossible. This realization fueled new projects and ideas that spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Space programs, once limited to a handful of nations, expanded rapidly. New ships were designed, not only for exploration, but for defense. Satellites were deployed to monitor the solar system, ensuring that humans would have early warning of any potential threat. Scientists worked on long-range scanners capable of detecting distant activity, while engineers developed automated systems to respond quickly to danger. The energy and focus poured into these projects created a sense of purpose and hope, unlike anything humanity had experienced before. While these technological and scientific efforts were underway, communication across the globe strengthened as well. People shared knowledge, ideas, and strategies openly. Borders no longer felt as important as they once had. The focus was on collaboration and learning. Communities that had once been isolated suddenly became part of a global network, connected by shared concern and ambition. Humanity's ability to work together became its greatest advantage. The military, too, transformed. Training intensified, with new simulations and exercises designed to prepare humans for scenarios they had never faced before. Tactics were discussed not in secrecy, but as part of a larger effort to make sure that knowledge could be shared and improved upon. Soldiers, engineers, and strategists worked together as never before. United by the knowledge that they were protecting more than a country, they were protecting the species at the same time. Civilians embraced the idea of responsibility. People understood that survival in the universe required more than armies or technology. Every individual could contribute, whether by learning, inventing, or simply staying informed. Schools began to teach concepts of space science, critical thinking, and problem solving. Even children were encouraged to imagine, invent, and think about the future of humanity. The broadcast had shown humans their vulnerability, but it also showed them the incredible potential they could unlock when united. The media played a crucial role in this transformation. Journalists and news outlets focused not on panic, but on clarity. They explained the broadcast in simple terms, analyzed what it meant, and reported on humanity's efforts to respond. Social media platforms buzzed with discussion and innovation, with people sharing discoveries, ideas, and encouragement. Humanity had turned fear into motivation, and the result was a global wave of activity that stretched from the smallest towns to the largest cities. Even in the midst of preparation, humans did not lose their humanity. Communities continued to support one another emotionally and socially. Mental health professionals worked tirelessly to help people cope with the stress of the broadcast and its implications. Families and friends came together, sharing hope, encouragement, and reassurance. Humanity had discovered that survival depended not only on strength or technology, but on compassion, understanding, and resilience. As months passed, the changes became visible. Space stations were reinforced, new ships were launched, and technologies previously considered impossible were now in development. Scientists discovered ways to harness energy more efficiently. Engineers created advanced communication systems, and researchers explored methods to detect even the faintest signals from the farthest reaches of space. Humanity's progress was remarkable, and every achievement reinforced the sense that they could meet any challenge. At the same time, a sense of pride and purpose spread through society. People no longer felt like passive observers of the universe. They were participants, thinkers, innovators, and protectors. The broadcast had been meant to intimidate, but it had inspired a global awakening. For the first time in history, billions of humans felt connected, capable, and responsible for their own destiny. This unity was visible in unexpected ways. Neighbors shared ideas, skills, and resources. Communities built networks of learning and support. Artists created works that celebrated human resilience. Writers penned stories that imagined new possibilities for life in the stars. Even sports, music, and entertainment carried themes of courage, teamwork, and hope. The broadcast had not just provoked fear. It had sparked creativity and determination. The lessons of the broadcast extended beyond technology and preparation. Humans began to reconsider their relationship with each other, with the planet, and with the universe. They realized that cooperation, compassion, and intelligence were their most powerful tools. Individual strength mattered, but collective effort was unstoppable. This understanding became the foundation for a new era of human progress, one built on shared knowledge, mutual respect, and unwavering determination. Even as humanity advanced, the memory of the destroyed outpost remained vivid. It was a reminder of what was at stake and why their efforts mattered. People reflected on the lives lost and the courage of those who had been there. Memorials were created, stories were told, and lessons were learned. The outpost had become a symbol, not of defeat, but of the need to rise, unite, and protect the future. Humanity's transformation was now visible on every level. Children dreamed of exploring space, engineers built ships, scientists pushed the boundaries of knowledge, and leaders worked together to ensure safety. It was a society united not by fear, but by shared purpose and ambition. The universe had challenged humanity, and humanity had responded, not with panic or despair, but with intelligence, courage, and collaboration. By the end of this phase, humanity had changed in ways that could not be undone. The broadcast had awakened something deep within people, a realization that they were capable of more than they had ever imagined. It had sparked innovation, unity, and hope. It had shown that when humans faced the unknown together, they could overcome any obstacle. And while the universe remained vast and mysterious, humanity was no longer afraid. For the first time, humans looked at the stars not as distant lights, but as a canvas for possibility. They knew the challenges ahead would be difficult, but they also knew they could meet them. The broadcast had tested humanity, and humanity had passed the first test. The next steps would be harder, but the people of Earth were ready. They had learned that fear could be transformed into purpose, division into unity, and uncertainty into action. And with that knowledge, they were prepared to face whatever the universe might send next. By now, humanity had transformed. The shock of the broadcast had faded, replaced by a quiet determination that spread across the globe. People no longer waited for the universe to act. They were preparing to act themselves. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, and civilians worked side by side, focused on a single goal: to ensure that humanity could respond to any threat in space, and to show that the lives of humans were never to be treated as insignificant. The first step was communication. Humans knew that responding recklessly could be dangerous, so the leaders of Earth decided to send a diplomatic message. It was carefully prepared, designed not as a threat, but as a demand for explanation. Humanity wanted to know why the outpost had been destroyed, and they wanted assurances that no other human settlements would be harmed. The message was sent through secure, high-speed transmission systems, reaching the alien empire with clarity and precision. The reaction to the message was immediate. The aliens responded, but their tone was cold and dismissive. They referred to humans as insignificant and primitive, as if the destruction of the outpost had been a demonstration of superiority. The arrogance of the response did not intimidate humans. Instead, it strengthened their resolve. The broadcast had been meant to frighten, but it had only united humanity and awakened a determination to be prepared for whatever came next. Behind the scenes, preparations accelerated. Shipyards that had been expanding quietly were now buzzing with activity. Engineers worked tirelessly on advanced spacecraft, equipping them with the latest technology. Propulsion systems were tested repeatedly, communication networks strengthened, and defensive measures installed. Every detail was scrutinized, because humans knew that mistakes could be fatal. The work was exhausting, but the energy and focus were unmatched. People knew the importance of what they were building, and that knowledge fueled their efforts. Military strategy also evolved. Commanders studied the broadcasts carefully, analyzing alien tactics and technology. Simulations ran around the clock, predicting possible scenarios and testing responses. Soldiers trained rigorously, preparing not just for combat, but for coordination, rescue operations, and strategic decision-making. It was clear that intelligence, discipline, and teamwork would be more important than raw strength. Humanity was preparing for a challenge, unlike any they had faced before, but they were determined to meet it. Yet the preparations were not limited to technology or strategy. Civilians contributed in countless ways, volunteering in research centers, building infrastructure, and helping to educate the public. Schools offered new programs on space science and strategy, inspiring students to think about the future of humanity. Communities worked together to solve practical problems, from resource management to energy production. Every effort strengthened the global network, making humanity more capable, resilient, and united than ever before. Even the arts and culture reflected the growing determination. Writers, musicians, and artists explored the themes of courage, unity, and resilience. Stories depicted humans facing unknown threats with intelligence and bravery. Music celebrated collaboration and hope. The creative spirit inspired people to keep moving forward, to innovate, and to contribute in ways large and small. Humanity had discovered that preparation was not only about technology, it was about spirit, creativity, and the belief in a shared destiny. The diplomatic probe, while carefully crafted, made it clear that the humans were no longer passive. The message had been intended as a warning, but it also carried the implicit understanding that humanity would not tolerate further attacks. Behind the scenes, plans were being made for a coordinated defense that could respond to any aggression, while minimizing unnecessary conflict. Humanity wanted peace, but they were ready to protect themselves at all costs. Meanwhile, the public followed every development with interest and concern. People watched as new ships were launched into orbit, as communication networks expanded, and as simulations demonstrated the potential of human fleets. Social media and news outlets shared updates in real time, explaining the science and strategy in ways everyone could understand. The broadcast had reminded humans of their vulnerability, but it had also shown them their incredible potential. The world was no longer waiting. It was actively shaping its future. Technology advanced at a remarkable pace. Engineers developed autonomous systems that could perform monitoring, repairs, and defensive maneuvers. Scientists refined propulsion and energy systems, enabling spacecraft to travel farther and faster. Communication experts created networks capable of secure, instant messaging across vast distances. Humanity's capacity to adapt and innovate had grown in ways that would have been unimaginable just months earlier. The focus on preparation also extended to exploration. Humans realized that understanding space was as important as defending against threats. Space agencies expanded missions to explore planets, moons, and asteroids. Research vessels studied cosmic phenomena and potential resources, building knowledge. that would strengthen humanity's position in the universe. Every discovery reinforced the idea that intelligence, curiosity, and collaboration were humanity's greatest assets. Communities across the world participated in the effort. People in remote villages shared observations of the skies, reported unusual signals, and contributed to local research centers. Cities built advanced communication hubs, laboratories, and educational centers to involve citizens in the preparation. Ordinary people felt connected to the larger mission, knowing that their contributions mattered. Humanity had become a species working together, united not by fear, but by purpose. At the same time, leaders understood the importance of maintaining trust and transparency. They shared information with the public while avoiding panic. Updates were provided in clear, simple language, explaining the significance of every development. People were encouraged to learn, participate, and take responsibility for their part in the preparations. The broadcast had reminded humanity that survival depended on knowledge, and the world responded with unprecedented cooperation. Even children were inspired. Schools incorporated lessons about space, exploration, and collaboration. Students imagined futures in which humans lived among the stars, capable of defending themselves and building new communities. Young people contributed ideas, projects, and enthusiasm, reinforcing the sense that the next generation would continue humanity's journey with courage and intelligence. As months passed, humanity's capabilities continued to grow. Fleets were constructed, tested, and deployed in orbit. Communication systems spanned the planet and extended into deep space. Autonomous monitoring stations scanned for signals, while research centers analyzed every piece of data received. Humans were no longer passive observers. They were active participants, ready to respond, explore, and protect. Yet, despite all the preparation, humans remained focused on principle. They wanted to avoid unnecessary conflict. The diplomatic message had been clear. Humanity would defend itself, but it sought explanation and understanding. Every action, from training exercises to technological advancement, was framed by the goal of readiness without recklessness. Humans understood that strength was most meaningful when guided by purpose and ethics. Cultural and social efforts complemented technological and strategic preparation. Communities held discussions, lectures, and workshops about space ethics, responsibility, and collaboration. Stories, music, and art reinforced the themes of courage, unity, and resilience. Humanity was not only building fleets and networks, it was building character, understanding, and a shared sense of destiny. The alien response, though dismissive and arrogant, only strengthened the collective determination. Humans realized that their position in the universe required not only readiness, but also intelligence, innovation, and coordination. Every person, institution, and community became part of a vast network focused on preparation and resilience. Humanity had learned that unity was their greatest weapon, and they wielded it with precision. By the end of this phase, Earth had become a planet transformed. Technology, strategy, and innovation had advanced at an unprecedented pace. Social cohesion, education, and community participation had strengthened human resilience. Citizens felt empowered, connected, and prepared. The broadcast that had started as a threat had become a catalyst for growth, uniting humanity in a shared mission of survival, knowledge, and dignity. Humanity now looked outward, not with fear, but with determination. The stars that once seemed distant and untouchable were now within reach. The aliens had assumed that humanity was weak and disorganized. They had underestimated the creativity, intelligence, and unity of a species that had faced adversity before and grown stronger. The broadcast had tested humanity, and humanity had passed not by showing aggression, but by showing preparation, intelligence, and collective strength. For the first time, Humans truly understood their place in the universe. They were no longer passive observers. They were participants, innovators, and protectors. Every discovery, every development, and every act of collaboration reinforced the belief that humanity could face the unknown, defend itself, and even thrive beyond Earth. The universe had thrown down a challenge, and humans had accepted it, not recklessly, but wisely and determinedly. And as night fell, humanity had prepared, trained, and learned. The broadcast that had once shocked the world now served as a guide, a reminder of what was at stake and why the collective effort of billions mattered. The alien empire that had destroyed the outpost thought that humans were disorganized, weak, and easy to intimidate. They had no idea what they were about to face. The first step was observation. Human fleets and satellites monitored the alien empire from a distance, analyzing movements, studying communication patterns, and mapping out potential strengths and weaknesses. Every piece of information was shared across a global network of scientists, engineers, and strategists. Nothing was wasted, no insight ignored. Humanity had learned that intelligence and patience were just as important as technology and strength. At the same time, preparations continued, ships were launched into orbit, advanced communication networks established, and deep space monitoring systems activated. Engineers tested propulsion, shielding, and energy systems. Soldiers practiced maneuvers and simulations, while scientists developed automated systems to ensure rapid responses. Humanity was ready not just for defense, but for coordinated, strategic action that could protect lives while minimizing unnecessary conflict. When humanity finally initiated contact, it was deliberate, cautious, and dignified. Diplomatic transmissions were sent, not as threats, but as clear statements of principle. The message was simple. Humans sought peace, but they would never tolerate attacks on their settlements or the lives of their people. Every word was carefully chosen to reflect strength, intelligence, and resolve. The aliens, for the first time, could see that humans were united and serious. The alien empire responded with surprise and arrogance. They assumed that humans would panic, divide, or retaliate without strategy. Instead, the human response was calm, coordinated, and intelligent. Fleets moved in formation, prepared for potential engagement, but their first priority remained observation and understanding. Humans had learned that strength was most effective when guided by intelligence and purpose. On board the human ships, crew members worked in harmony. Scientists monitored signals, soldiers studied potential scenarios, and engineers ensured that every system functioned perfectly. There was no panic, no rash decisions, only focus, collaboration, and determination. Humans had discovered that working together, using both knowledge and creativity, was their greatest advantage in the vastness of space. The first real encounter with the alien forces was unexpected. The aliens had assumed that humans would attack immediately. Instead, human fleets maneuvered with precision, using strategy and communication to demonstrate capability without unnecessary aggression. Small probes collected data from a safe distance, while automated systems monitored potential threats. Humans were not reckless, they were prepared. Across Earth, people followed the developments with awe and hope. Screens showed the movement of fleets, updates on research, and messages explaining each decision. Social media and news outlets shared educational content about the strategies, technology, and philosophy behind humanity's approach. The public learned that courage did not always mean rushing into danger. It could mean careful planning, intelligence, and unwavering determination. At the same time, the alien empire began to recognize something they had not expected. Humanity was disciplined, coordinated, and adaptable. The broadcast of the destroyed outpost had been intended to intimidate, but it had united humans, sharpened their focus, and strengthened their resolve. The aliens realized that they had underestimated a species capable of collaboration, creativity, and strategic thinking. Humans also showed an unexpected form of strength, restraint. Even as they prepared for possible conflict, they did not launch unnecessary attacks. Every move was calculated, measured, and purposeful. Humanity had learned that power was not about destruction, but about demonstrating capability, discipline, and ethical responsibility. This restraint was itself a statement. Humans were intelligent, organized, and principled, and they would not be bullied or provoked without consequence. Communication continued, both between humans and with the alien empire. The messages were firm, clear, and unyielding. Humans demanded explanation and accountability, and while the aliens remained arrogant, they began to hesitate. The realization that humans were united, intelligent, and prepared shook their assumptions. The broadcast that had been intended to show dominance now exposed their vulnerability. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, humans prepared for every possible scenario. Contingency plans were developed, simulations run continuously, and automated systems tested. Engineers improved energy shields, propulsion systems, and monitoring networks. Soldiers trained for coordinated responses, rescue missions, and strategic maneuvers. The preparation was exhaustive, but the effort was worth it. Humanity was not just ready, they were ahead, disciplined, and united. Even civilians contributed in critical ways. Scientists, educators, and engineers shared knowledge. Students and volunteers participated in simulations, data analysis, and community programs. People understood that every effort, no matter how small, mattered. Humanity had learned that the strength of a species was not measured only by its technology or military might, but by the collaboration, creativity, and determination of its people. As the weeks passed, human fleets continued to monitor alien activity, ready to respond, but avoiding unnecessary confrontation. Diplomacy remained a priority, but humans had made it clear that any further aggression would meet coordinated, effective resistance. The alien empire had been warned. Humans would not be intimidated, divided, or underestimated. The alien response became increasingly cautious. They observed humans with growing respect and concern, realizing that the species they had dismissed was disciplined, strategic, and united. Every move made by humanity demonstrated intelligence, capability, and restraint. The broadcast that had been intended to show weakness now revealed the opposite. Humans were strong, determined, and unyielding in principle. On Earth, people watched with pride and hope. Schools, communities, and families discussed the unfolding events, emphasizing lessons about intelligence, cooperation, and moral responsibility. Children were inspired by stories of preparation, courage, and collective effort. Adults shared knowledge, supported each other, and contributed to ongoing efforts. Humanity was not only ready for the unknown, it was thriving in its unity and capability. Technology continued to advance rapidly. New spacecraft, communication networks, and automated systems strengthened humanity's position. Scientists discovered methods to improve energy efficiency, propulsion, and monitoring capabilities. Engineers refined systems for rapid deployment, data collection, and coordinated action. Every development reinforced the message. Humans were united, intelligent, and prepared for any challenge. Humanity's transformation was complete in ways the aliens could not have predicted. The broadcast had provoked anger, but it had also inspired intelligence, unity, and determination. Humans had learned to act with purpose, to work together across borders and disciplines, and to prepare with patience and discipline. They had become a species capable of facing the unknown with confidence, skill, and ethical responsibility. And yet, despite all the preparation, humanity remained focused on principle. They did not seek unnecessary conflict. They wanted peace, understanding, and fairness. But they would never again allow themselves to be intimidated, attacked, or dismissed. The alien broadcast had revealed their vulnerability, but it had also awakened a global determination, a shared sense of identity, and a willingness to protect themselves with intelligence and collaboration. By the end of this stage, humans had achieved something remarkable. They had confronted a powerful alien empire without resorting to aggression, had demonstrated capability and discipline, and had united billions of people behind a common goal. The broadcast that had once sparked fear had transformed into a catalyst for strength, unity, and preparation. Humans had shown that they could respond to threats not with panic, but with intelligence, cooperation, and resilience. As the stars shone over Earth, people looked up with a mixture of pride, determination, and hope. They had learned the value of unity, the importance of preparation, and the strength that comes from working together as a species. The alien empire had underestimated humanity, and now they had begun to see that humans were capable of far more than they had imagined. Humanity had turned a moment of fear into an era of growth, innovation, and determination. They had faced the unknown, confronted arrogance, and shown that they could respond with intelligence, restraint, and courage. The broadcast had started a journey, but humans were no longer passive participants. They were ready to protect themselves, to explore, and to ensure that their lives and values would never be taken lightly again. The months of preparation, study, and observation had brought humanity to a new stage. The broadcast that had shocked the world and destroyed a remote outpost had started as a moment of fear, but it had grown into a turning point. Humans were no longer reactive. They were proactive, united, and ready to face the universe with intelligence, courage, and dignity. Every effort, from the smallest observation to the largest technological development, had prepared them for this moment. Human fleets were in position. Satellites and monitoring systems scanned the depths of space, and communication networks reached farther than ever before. Every action was coordinated, precise, and intentional. The goal was not revenge, nor was it aggression. Humanity sought understanding, dialogue, and protection, but they would not allow threats to go unanswered. The lessons from the destroyed outpost had been clear. Unity, intelligence, and preparedness were the keys to survival. When the alien empire realized that humanity had grown beyond what they had assumed, they hesitated. The arrogance that had led them to broadcast the destruction of the outpost was now met with calm, organized strength. Humans had transformed fear into capability, and their readiness was visible across every corner of their home planet and every ship in orbit. The message was undeniable. Humans were capable, united, and principled. Humanity's response began with communication. Instead of immediate retaliation, they sent a broadcast of their own. It was clear, measured, and firm. Humans demanded accountability, sought explanation, and outlined the principles they would uphold. The message was simple. Peace was desired. Aggression would not be tolerated, and human life would always be protected. The broadcast was designed not to escalate conflict, but to make the human position clear to the alien empire and the entire galaxy. The aliens, for the first time, had to reconsider. They had underestimated a species that could think strategically, act with patience, and organize billions of individuals around a shared purpose. Humanity had shown that intelligence, unity, and discipline were as formidable as technology. The arrogance that had fueled the initial attack now met with the reality of a species that could respond with precision and principle. On board human ships, crew members worked seamlessly. Scientists analyzed alien signals, engineers tested systems, and commanders coordinated maneuvers with skill and calm. Every movement was precise, every action purposeful. Humans had learned that their greatest power lay not in impulsive action, but in patience, preparation, and unity. The fleet was a reflection of humanity itself, organized, resilient, and capable of extraordinary collaboration. Civilians played a critical role as well. Across the world, people contributed knowledge, skills, and ideas. Volunteers assisted in data analysis. Engineers refined systems from research centers, and educators helped spread understanding about the unfolding events. Even children participated, learning about space, teamwork, and problem-solving. Humanity had become a species that did not rely solely on leaders or technology, but on the collective intelligence and spirit of billions. The first direct interactions with the alien empire were cautious but effective. Humans had developed methods to monitor alien movements, communicate clearly, and anticipate potential threats. Every step was measured, ensuring that humanity could respond if necessary, while avoiding unnecessary conflict. It was a demonstration of capability and restraint, a statement that humans were strong, intelligent, and principled. As the interactions continued, the alien empire began to change. They realized that humans were not a species to underestimate. The broadcasts, fleets, and networks demonstrated not just technological capability, but also moral responsibility. Humanity had shown that they could protect themselves, negotiate, and respond intelligently to threats. The empire's initial arrogance gave way to caution, and eventually, a begrudging respect. Back on Earth, people watched with a sense of pride and hope. News outlets and social media shared updates about the fleets, the technology, and the interactions with the alien empire. Communities held discussions. Schools incorporated lessons about strategy and cooperation, and families talked late into the night about what it meant to be human. The broadcast had changed everything, but it had also revealed humanity's greatest strengths: intelligence, unity, and resilience. As humans continued to communicate and observe, they also focused on protecting lives and promoting understanding. The goal was not to conquer, but to demonstrate capability and uphold principles. Humans had learned that strength without ethics was meaningless. They had transformed fear into strategy, anger into collaboration, and uncertainty into action. The galaxy watched, perhaps for the first time, as a species demonstrated that intelligence, preparation, and morality could coexist with strength. The alien empire, seeing humanity's preparation and restraint, began to negotiate cautiously. They understood that attacks would no longer intimidate humans, and any aggression would be met with disciplined, coordinated responses. Humanity had made it clear they sought peace, fairness, and respect, but they would never again allow their species to be threatened or dismissed. The broadcasts of destruction had awakened a global determination, and humans had shown that they could meet any challenge without losing their moral compass. Technological and scientific progress continued alongside diplomacy. New ships, satellites, and monitoring systems were launched. Engineers refined propulsion, communication, and energy systems. Scientists explored deep space, mapping planets, moons, and asteroids. Every innovation strengthened humanity's ability to protect itself and advance into the universe. Humans had realized that survival was not just about defense, it was about intelligence, collaboration, and foresight. Even in everyday life, the changes were visible. Communities worked together, sharing knowledge, supporting innovation, and encouraging problem-solving. Schools inspired children to think about exploration, ethics, and strategy. Families discussed the importance of unity and responsibility. Humanity had transformed from a species divided by borders and politics into a species that acted collectively, with intelligence, purpose, and moral clarity. As weeks and months passed, humans' approach to the universe continued to evolve. The alien empire had come to recognize that humanity was not easily intimidated, and their arrogance had been replaced with caution. Humans had not only defended themselves, but they had also demonstrated principles that others could respect. Intelligence, unity, restraint, and moral responsibility had become humanity's defining strengths. By the end of this stage, humanity had achieved something extraordinary. They had responded to a powerful alien empire without recklessness, demonstrated capability and discipline, and maintained ethical principles. The broadcast that had begun as a moment of fear had become a catalyst for growth, unity, and innovation. Humans had proven that they could respond to threats intelligently, collectively, and responsibly. And as night fell across Earth, people looked up at the stars with pride and determination. They understood that humanity had faced the unknown, met arrogance with intelligence, and turned fear into strength. The alien empire had underestimated them, and humans had shown that they were capable of protecting their own, exploring the universe, and shaping their destiny. The broadcast that had once stirred humanity's darkest wrath had instead awakened humanity's greatest potential. It had inspired courage, unity, and creativity. It had strengthened the bond between people, nations, and communities. And it had shown that, when faced with challenges, humans could act not only with strength, but with intelligence, restraint, and morality. Humanity had changed forever. The universe was vast, and threats would always exist. But now, humans knew that they could face them together. They had learned that fear could be transformed into action, anger into preparation, and uncertainty into knowledge. The broadcast had started a journey that would shape the species for generations, proving to the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated, dismissed, or ignored. For the first time, humanity truly understood its power, not in weapons, but in intelligence, unity, and resilience. They had faced a test, met it with courage and principle, and emerged stronger than ever. The alien empire had been taught a lesson. Human life, intelligence, and unity were forces that could not be. Broken dot as the stars shone over Earth, people continued to work, learn, and explore. Humanity had proven that it could meet any challenge with discipline, creativity, and moral clarity. The galaxy had witnessed the awakening of a species capable of remarkable cooperation, intelligence, and resilience. The broadcast that had begun as a moment of fear had become the foundation for humanity's future, a future defined by unity, courage, and the unshakable determination to protect what was theirs.